The bell above the door chimed softly, and Elena looked up from the delicate pocket watch spread across her workbench to see a man who carried himself like he owned the entire street outside, not just whatever expensive suit he was wearing. She set down her magnifying loupe and wiped her hands on her work apron, leaving small smudges of oil on the worn cotton. The shop was small, tucked between a bakery and a used bookstore on Maple Street, with wooden shelves displaying her collection of restored timepieces. Sunlight streamed through the front window, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air like tiny stars. "Can I help you?" Elena asked, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. The man approached her counter with measured steps, pulling a watch from his jacket pocket. He was tall, probably in his early 30s, with dark hair that was perfectly styled and eyes the color of storm clouds. Everything about him screamed money, from his Italian leather shoes to the watch on his wrist that probably cost more than her entire year's rent. "I hope so," he said, his voice smooth and cultured. "This watch belonged to my grandfather. It stopped working last week." Elena held out her hand and he placed the watch in her palm. It was a beautiful piece, a vintage Patek Philippe with a gold case and intricate engravings along the back. She turned it over carefully, examining the craftsmanship with practiced eyes. "This is stunning," she said honestly. "May I open it, please?" She used a small tool from her workbench to carefully pry open the case back. Inside, the movement was a work of art, tiny gears and springs assembled with precision that modern machines could barely replicate. She could see immediately what the problem was. "The mainspring is broken," she explained, pointing with a tiny screwdriver. "It's a common issue with vintage pieces. I can replace it, but I'll need to order the part. This model requires something very specific." "How long will it take?" "About a week, maybe less if the supplier has it in stock." He nodded, pulling out a business card and sliding it across the counter. "That's fine. Call me when it's ready." Elena glanced at the card. Alexander Harding, it read, with a phone number and an email address. No company name, no title. "I'll take good care of it," she promised. "I can tell you will." He smiled, and something about that smile made her stomach flutter unexpectedly. "Your work is impressive." He gestured to the restored clocks lining her shelves. "Thank you. It's a family trade. My father taught me everything." "Then you learned from the best, I'm sure." After he left, Elena stood holding his business card for a long moment, wondering why her heart was beating faster than usual. She shook her head, annoyed at herself, and got back to work on the pocket watch that had been occupying her morning. 6 days later, Alexander Harding returned. Elena had called him that morning to let him know his watch was ready, and he appeared in her shop exactly at the time she had suggested. She had cleaned and polished the case until it gleamed, and the watch now kept perfect time. "It's beautiful," he said, turning it over in his hands. "You do excellent work." "Thank you. The mainspring is new, but I made sure it matched the original specifications exactly. It should run smoothly for years now." He pulled out his wallet, but Elena named a price that made him pause. "That's all. That's fair for the work involved. I've paid triple this at other shops for less complicated repairs." Elena shrugged. "I price my work according to the time and materials, not according to what watch someone wears when they walk in." He looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. Then he handed her cash, including a tip that she immediately tried to refuse. "Please," he said. "You did exceptional work. Accept it." She nodded reluctantly, sliding the money into her register. She expected him to leave then, but he lingered, looking at the watches displayed in her shop. "You restore these yourself?" he asked. "Most of them. Some I buy at estate sales or auctions when I find something interesting. I fix them up and sell them to collectors or people who appreciate vintage pieces. You're passionate about it. I am. There's something special about bringing old things back to life. Every watch has a story, you know. Someone wore it on their wedding day or during a war or while building something important. When I repair them, I feel like I'm preserving that history. Alexander smiled again, and this time Elena noticed how it softened his entire face. That's a beautiful way to look at it. He bought a small Art Deco clock that she had recently restored before he left. Elena told herself the warm feeling in her chest was just professional satisfaction at making a good sale. The following Tuesday, the bell chimed again, and Alexander walked in carrying another watch. Back so soon? Elena asked, surprised. I have quite a collection, he said, sounding almost sheepish. This one has been running slow. I thought you might be able to regulate it. She took the watch, another expensive vintage piece, and examined it carefully. The regulation was indeed off, something that would take her perhaps 30 minutes to fix. I can do this while you wait, if you'd like. Perfect. He settled into the old leather chair she kept by the window for customers, and Elena returned to her workbench. She was acutely aware of his presence as she worked, though she tried to focus on the delicate task at hand. The shop suddenly felt smaller, more intimate. How long have you been doing this? He asked after a few minutes of comfortable silence. Since I was 12. My father had a shop 2 towns over. He taught me to see watches not just as objects, but as little universes, each piece working together in perfect harmony. Is he still working? Elena's hand stilled for just a moment. He passed away 3 years ago. Heart attack. I'm sorry. Thank you. I miss him every day. But continuing his work helps. This shop, these repairs, it keeps him close somehow. She finished the adjustment and tested the watch, listening to its rhythm with her trained ear. Satisfied, she closed the case and handed it back to Alexander. All set. It should keep perfect time now. He paid her, and this time he stayed even longer, asking about various pieces in her shop, listening with genuine interest as she explained their histories and mechanisms. When he finally left, Elena realized 2 hours had passed. The next week, he came back with another watch, then another the week after that. Elena began to look forward to Tuesdays when the bell would chime and Alexander would walk in with his easy smile and another timepiece that needed attention. Sometimes the repairs were legitimate, complex work that required her full skill. Other times, she suspected he was inventing problems just to have an excuse to visit. You know, she said one afternoon as she worked on his 5th watch in as many weeks, you could bring all of these at once. It would save you trips. I could, he agreed, leaning against her counter. But then I wouldn't have an excuse to come back every week. Elena looked up, meeting his eyes. Her heart hammered in her chest. You need an excuse. Apparently I do. You're a hard person to ask out properly. She set down her tools carefully, buying herself time to process his words. You want to ask me out? I've wanted to since the first day I walked in here. But you seemed so focused on your work, so professional. I didn't want to be that guy who hits on someone just trying to do her job. Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks. So you brought me broken watches instead. It seemed less forward. He ran a hand through his hair, looking genuinely uncertain for the first time since she had met him. Was I wrong? If you're not interested, please tell me. I'll stop bothering you. You're not bothering me, she said quickly, too quickly. I mean, I look forward to your visits. His expression brightened. Yeah, she smiled, feeling brave. So ask me properly. Elena Martinez, would you have dinner with me this Saturday? Yes, she said simply. I would. Saturday evening arrived wrapped in autumn gold, the air crisp and smelling of fallen leaves. Elena changed outfits 3 times before settling on a simple navy dress that her best friend Maria had convinced her to buy months ago. She had never had occasion to wear it until now. Alexander picked her up in a car that probably cost more than her shop, but he opened her door with old-fashioned courtesy and complimented her dress without being overbearing. He took her to a restaurant that she had heard of but never visited, the kind of place where reservations had to be made weeks in advance. "This is too much," she protested as they were led to a private table overlooking the city. "It's not enough," he countered. "You should see where you're eating. The chef here is incredible." Throughout dinner, they talked like they had been doing this for years. Alexander told her about his work in commercial real estate development. Though he glossed over the details in a way that made Elena suspect, there was more to his story than he was sharing. She told him about growing up in her father's watch shop, about the magic of taking apart her first clock at age 10, about her dreams of one day expanding her business. "Why haven't you?" he asked. "Expanded, I mean. Your work is exceptional. You could have a much bigger operation." Elena set down her wine glass, considering. "I could, but I like the intimacy of what I do now. Each repair gets my full attention. Each customer gets personalized service. If I grew too large, I'd have to hire people, and then I'd spend more time managing than actually working with the watches. I'd lose the thing I love most about it." "That makes sense," he said. "Though it's rare to meet someone who would choose passion over profit, money isn't everything." Something flickered across his face, an expression she could not quite read. "No, it's not." The evening stretched into night, and when Alexander finally drove her home, Elena felt like she was floating. He walked her to her door, which was above her shop, and paused at the bottom of the stairs. "Can I see you again?" he asked. "Definitely. Without the excuse of broken watches." She laughed. "Without the excuse, though you can still bring them, I do actually enjoy repairing them." He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to. She did not want to. The kiss was soft, tentative, perfect. When they separated, Elena felt breathless. "Tuesday," he suggested. "Tuesday," she agreed. Over the following weeks, Elena and Alexander fell into an easy rhythm. He came by the shop on Tuesdays, sometimes with watches that needed repair, sometimes just to take her to lunch. They had dinner every Saturday, sometimes at expensive restaurants, other times at the tiny Thai place 3 blocks from her shop that served the best pad Thai Elena had ever tasted. He seemed to enjoy both equally, which surprised her. She learned that he was an early riser who went running every morning at 6, that he took his coffee black with 1 sugar, that he had lost his grandfather, the original owner of that first Patek Philippe, when he was 15, and had been trying to live up to the old man's expectations ever since. That he played piano, but only when he thought no one was listening. He learned that she hummed while she worked, usually old jazz standards her father had loved, that she had a weakness for old movies, particularly anything with Cary Grant, that she could not cook to save her life but made incredible coffee, that she missed her father with an ache that time had softened but never erased. One Thursday evening in late November, Maria burst into the shop just as Elena was closing up. "Okay, spill everything," Maria demanded, perching on the counter. "You've been dating this mystery man for almost 2 months, and I've barely heard anything except that he's gorgeous and brings you broken watches." Elena laughed, locking the front door and flipping the sign to closed. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. What does he do? Where does he live? Why have I not met him yet?" "He works in real estate development. He lives downtown somewhere, I think, and you haven't met him because I've been keeping him to myself." Maria narrowed her eyes. "You're being evasive." "What's wrong?" Elena sighed, leaning against her workbench. "Nothing's wrong. Everything is actually really good, maybe too good. How can something be too good? He's so far out of my league, Maria. The restaurants he takes me to, the car he drives, the watch he wears, it probably costs more than I make in 6 months. And he never talks about money, never makes me feel less than, but the gap is still there, you know? Does he treat you well? Incredibly well. Does he respect your work? Absolutely. Is he good in bed, Maria? What? It's a valid question. Elena felt her face heat. We haven't, we're taking things slow. Maria raised an eyebrow. 2 months is slow, I want to be sure, Elena said quietly. This feels different, important. I don't want to mess it up by rushing. Her friend's expression softened. You're falling for him. I think I already fell. The words hung in the air between them, true and terrifying. Maria hopped off the counter and pulled Elena into a hug. Then stop worrying about leagues and money and all that garbage, she said firmly. If he makes you happy and treats you right, that's what matters. That Saturday, Alexander arrived at her door looking nervous in a way Elena had never seen before. I want to show you something, he said. If you're free tomorrow. What is it? A surprise. Wear comfortable shoes. Sunday morning dawned clear and cold, frost decorating the windows in delicate patterns. Alexander picked her up early, driving out of the city and into the countryside. Elena watched the landscape shift from urban to suburban to rural, curious but trusting. After about 90 minutes, he turned down a long gravel driveway that led to a sprawling property. There was a main house, elegant but not ostentatious, and several outbuildings scattered across manicured grounds. Where are we? Elena asked. My home, Alexander said quietly. I wanted you to see it. He gave her a tour of the property, showing her the gardens that his mother had designed before she passed, the workshop where his grandfather had spent hours building furniture as a hobby, the library filled with books 3 generations deep. The house was beautiful but lived in, comfortable in a way that surprised Elena. She had expected something sterile and showcase perfect. In the main living room, a grand piano sat by the window. Elena ran her fingers along its polished surface. Will you play for me? She asked. Alexander looked uncomfortable. I told you I only play when I think no one is listening. I'm asking you to let me listen. He studied her face for a long moment, then sat down at the piano. His fingers found the keys and he began to play. The music was hauntingly beautiful, a classical piece that Elena did not recognize but felt in her bones. She watched his face as he played, seeing the way the tension melted from his shoulders, the way his expression softened into something vulnerable and real. When the final notes faded, Elena walked over and kissed him. Not soft and tentative like before, but deep and full of everything she had been feeling but had not yet said aloud. Stay, he whispered against her lips. Stay for dinner, stay the night, stay. Yes, she breathed. They cooked together in his massive kitchen, though cooking was perhaps too generous a word for the chaos they created. Elena burned the vegetables while Alexander oversalted the pasta, and they ended up ordering pizza and eating it on the floor by the fireplace, laughing at their complete inability to prepare a simple meal. Later, in his bedroom with moonlight streaming through the windows, Elena finally let herself be completely vulnerable. Alexander was gentle and passionate in equal measure, and when she fell asleep in his arms, she felt safer than she had in years. Monday morning, Elena woke to the smell of coffee and found Alexander in the kitchen, already dressed in running clothes. Morning, he said, handing her a mug. I didn't want to wake you. What time is it? 6:30. I was about to go for my run, but I wanted to make sure you had coffee first. Elena smiled into her mug. You're going to spoil me. That's the plan. He drove her back to the city after his run, kissing her goodbye outside her shop with the promise to see her on Tuesday. Elena walked upstairs to her apartment, still wearing yesterday's clothes, feeling like she was carrying sunshine inside her chest. The next few weeks passed in a blur of happiness. Elena had never thought of herself as someone who could be swept away by romance, but Alexander made it easy. He left little notes in her toolbox for her to find during the day. He learned how she took her coffee and showed up with it on mornings when she had to open the shop early. He listened when she talked about her father and shared his own grief about losing his grandfather and mother. But there was still something he was holding back. Elena could sense it in the way he sometimes deflected questions about his work, in the careful way he talked about his life. She did not push, trusting that he would tell her when he was ready. The truth came out in mid-December, in the most mundane way possible. Maria finally insisted on meeting Alexander, so they all went out for drinks at a bar downtown. Everything was going well until a woman approached their table, her face lighting up when she saw Alexander. "Mr. Harding," she exclaimed. "I didn't expect to see you here. I wanted to thank you again for your donation to our charity gala last month. Your generosity made the entire event possible." Alexander stood, shaking her hand politely. "I'm glad it was successful, Mrs. Chen. Please give my regards to your husband." After the woman left, Maria looked at Alexander with new eyes. "Harding," she said slowly. "As in Harding Development Corporation. As in the Harding family who owns half the commercial real estate in the state." Elena's stomach dropped. She looked at Alexander, seeing the truth in his expression. "You could have mentioned that," Maria continued, her tone edging toward accusatory. "It doesn't matter," Alexander said quietly, his eyes on Elena. "Doesn't matter," Maria laughed. "You're not just successful, you're one of the richest men in the entire region." "That seems like something worth mentioning." "Maria," Elena said sharply, "can you give us a minute?" Her friend looked between them, then grabbed her purse. "I'll be at the bar." After she left, Elena and Alexander sat in heavy silence. "I should have told you," he said finally. "Yes, you should have. I wanted you to know me first. Not the money, not the reputation, just me." Elena took a long drink of her wine, trying to organize her thoughts. "I'm not upset that you have money, Alexander. I'm upset that you hid something so fundamental about who you are. I've been completely open with you about my life, and you've been holding back this massive piece of yourself. I know, you're right. Every other woman I've dated, once they found out about the money, that became all they cared about. The dinners got more expensive, the gift expectations got higher, and I could never tell if they actually liked me or just what I could give them. So you decided to test me, see how long it would take me to figure it out. No, God, no. At first, yes, I was cautious. But then I fell in love with you, and I was scared that if you knew the truth, everything would change, that you would start seeing the money instead of me." Elena's heart caught on one particular phrase. "You fell in love with me." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "Completely. Irrevocably. I love watching you work because your face lights up with pure concentration. I love that you hum jazz standards and can't cook and price your repairs fairly even when you could charge 3 times as much. I love that you see beauty in broken things and have the patience to make them whole again. I love you, Elena, all of you, and I'm terrified that I've screwed this up." She sat with his words, feeling their weight. Finally, she squeezed his hand. "I need time to think," she said. "This is a lot." Pain flashed across his face, but he nodded. "Take all the time you need." Elena spent the next 3 days in her shop, working longer hours than usual, using the familiar rhythm of repairs to sort through her feelings. Maria came by multiple times, alternating between apologizing for creating the confrontation and insisting that Elena was crazy if she let a good man go over money. "He should have told me," Elena insisted, carefully adjusting the escapement on a pocket watch. "Yes, he should have," Maria agreed. "But people make mistakes when they're falling in love. The question is whether you love him back enough to forgive this one. Did she love him?" Elena turned the question over in her mind like one of her watch movements, examining it from every angle. She thought about Alexander's smile when he walked into her shop every Tuesday, the way he played piano like he was sharing his soul, the careful attention he paid when she talked about her father, the notes he left in her toolbox, the way he made her coffee without being asked. Yes, she realized. She loved him, completely and without reservation. The realization was terrifying and liberating in equal measure. Tuesday came, and Elena waited to see if Alexander would still show up. When the bell chimed at 11, her heart leaped. He walked in looking tired, with dark circles under his eyes that suggested he had been sleeping as poorly as she had. "Hi," he said quietly. "Hi. I wasn't sure if I should come, but I couldn't stay away. Even if you tell me to leave, I needed to see you." Elena set down her tools and came around the counter. "I've been thinking, and you were wrong not to tell me. That was a breach of trust and it hurt." He nodded, his expression pained. "I know, I'm so sorry. But I also understand why you did it, and I forgive you because I love you too." Hope bloomed across his face. "You do, I do. And here's the thing you need to understand, Alexander Harding. I don't care about your money. I don't want expensive gifts or lavish vacations or any of that. What I want is you, the man who brings me broken watches. The man who plays piano when he thinks no one is listening. The man who orders pizza after we destroy his kitchen trying to cook. That's who I fell in love with." He crossed the remaining space between them in 2 strides, pulling her into his arms and kissing her with desperate relief. When they finally broke apart, they were both laughing and crying at the same time. "I love you," he said again. "And I promise, no more secrets." "Good. Because I have terrible taste in men, and if I have to start over again, Maria will never let me hear the end of it." They spent the rest of the afternoon in her shop. Alexander sitting in his usual chair while Elena worked, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about growing up with wealth, about the pressure to take over the family company, about his fears that he would never be as good a man as his grandfather had been. She told him about the lean years after her father died, about almost losing the shop, about her dreams of maybe someday teaching others the art of watch repair. "I could help with that," Alexander said. "If you wanted, not money unless you wanted that too, but connections, space, resources." Elena considered. "Maybe, let me think about it. I don't want charity." "It wouldn't be charity. It would be supporting someone I love in pursuing their passion." That evening, Alexander took her to dinner at the Thai place 3 blocks from her shop, and Elena felt like everything had finally clicked back into proper alignment, like a watch movement after careful regulation. Christmas arrived wrapped in snow and twinkling lights. Alexander insisted on spending it with Elena, even though she warned him that her celebrations were modest compared to what he was probably used to. "I don't want to go to some fancy party," he assured her. "I want to be with you." They spent Christmas Eve in her apartment above the shop, drinking hot chocolate and watching old movies. Elena gave him a carefully restored vintage watch that she had been working on for weeks, a 1950s Omega that she had found at an estate sale in terrible condition. She had spent hours bringing it back to life, replacing parts, polishing the case, ensuring it kept perfect time. "This is incredible," Alexander breathed, turning it over in his hands. "You made this for me. I restored it for you. It seemed fitting given how we met. I'll treasure it always." His gift to her was wrapped in simple paper, which she appreciated. Inside was a leather toolbox, custom-made, with her initials embossed on the lid. When she opened it, she found it filled with watch repair tools of the highest quality, many of them antique pieces that she had only dreamed of owning. "Alexander," she whispered, "this is too much." "It's not. These tools belong to a master watchmaker in Switzerland. When I told the dealer I was buying them for someone who would appreciate their history and use them to continue the craft, he was happy to sell them. They should be with someone who will love them as much as their original owner did." Elena ran her fingers over the beautiful instruments, feeling the weight of history and care. "Thank you. This is the most thoughtful gift anyone has ever given me." They made love that night with snow falling outside the window, and Elena felt complete in a way she had not since her father died. She had not realized how lonely she had been until she was no longer alone. As winter melted into spring, Elena and Alexander's relationship deepened and strengthened. They had disagreements, of course, about his tendency to work too hard and her stubbornness about accepting help, about whose turn it was to attempt cooking and whether they should just give up and order takeout, about silly things and serious things and everything in between. But they also learned to communicate, to compromise, to meet each other halfway. Alexander started spending more nights at her apartment than his own house, claiming he liked the cozy chaos of her space above the shop. Elena started attending some of his work functions, uncomfortable in fancy dresses, but proud to support him. In April, Alexander came to the shop on a Tuesday with a proposition. "I found a building," he said without preamble. "It's in the historic district, 3 stories. The ground floor would be perfect for a watch repair shop and classroom space. The second floor could be a museum for displaying vintage pieces. The third floor is a beautiful apartment with huge windows." Elena looked up from her work, eyebrows raised. "Okay, I want to buy it, for you, for us, Alexander." "Wait, let me finish. You would own the building. Your name on the deed. You could expand your business like you've been dreaming about, offer classes in watch repair, create something really special, and we could live there together, make it ours." Elena set down her tools carefully. "That's a huge step, I know, and if it's too fast, tell me." "But Elena, I want to build a life with you. A real life. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep with you every night. I want to support your dreams and share mine with you. I want everything." She walked around the counter and stood in front of him, taking his hands. "I want that too, but I need to contribute. I can't let you just buy me a building. What if we buy it together? You contribute what you can, I'll cover the rest, and we both own it equally." "That seems unfair to you. Love isn't about fairness, it's about partnership. Let me do this, please." Elena thought about her little shop, about the years she had spent keeping her father's legacy alive in this cramped but beloved space. Then she thought about the possibility of more, of teaching others, of creating something larger, of sharing her passion with the world. "Okay," she said. "Yes. Let's do it." Alexander's face split into a huge grin. He picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing like children. When he set her down, he kissed her thoroughly, not caring that they were visible through the shop window. The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. They bought the building together, Elena contributing her savings and Alexander covering the rest, just as he had promised. Elena closed her shop on Maple Street with bittersweet emotions, packing up her tools and inventory, saying goodbye to the space where she had mourned her father and built her business and met the man she loved. The new location was everything Alexander had promised. The ground floor had soaring ceilings and huge windows that flooded the space with natural light. Elena designed it carefully, creating a workspace for repairs, a classroom area for teaching, and a small showroom for her restored pieces. The second floor became a museum of sorts, displaying her growing collection of vintage timepieces with careful historical notes. The apartment on the third floor took her breath away. Exposed brick walls, original hardwood floors, a kitchen that was actually functional, and windows that overlooked the historic district with its charming architecture. It was the most beautiful place Elena had ever lived. Maria helped her move, making inappropriate comments about the bedroom and interrogating Alexander about his intentions. "When are you going to marry her?" she demanded while Elena was out of earshot. "Soon," Alexander promised. "I'm just waiting for the right moment. Don't wait too long." "She's a catch and you know it. Trust me, I know." In June, Elena opened the doors of her new establishment, which she named simply Martinez Timepieces. The response was overwhelming. Local newspapers ran features about her work. Collectors began seeking her out specifically. Her first round of classes filled up within days, students eager to learn the dying art of mechanical watch repair. Alexander was there for all of it, supporting but never overshadowing. He helped her set up the museum displays using his eye for design. He handled the business paperwork that made her eyes glaze over. He brought her lunch when she forgot to eat, too absorbed in a complicated repair or in teaching a student the proper way to handle delicate components. One evening in late July, they sat on the roof of their building, which had access via a small hatch. Alexander had set up a blanket and pillows, along with a bottle of wine and a spread of cheese and fruit. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "This is perfect," Elena sighed, leaning against him. "It is," he agreed, "though it could be even better." How he shifted, and Elena realized with a jolt that he was moving onto one knee. Her heart began hammering in her chest. "Elena Martinez," he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. "You took my broken watch and made it whole again. But more than that, you took my broken heart and healed it. You saw past my money and my name and loved me just for being myself. You challenge me, inspire me, and make me want to be better every single day. I love you more than I knew it was possible to love someone. Will you marry me?" He opened the box, revealing a ring that made Elena gasp. It was vintage, probably from the 1920s, with a beautiful diamond set in platinum filigree. It was elegant and unique and absolutely perfect. "It was my grandmother's," Alexander explained. "She gave it to my grandfather when he proposed. After she died, he kept it, hoping one day I would find someone worthy of wearing it. I think he would have loved you." Tears streamed down Elena's face. "Yes," she managed. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. They kissed as the sun set around them, both crying and laughing at the same time. "I can't wait to call Maria," Elena said when they finally broke apart. "She's going to scream so loud we'll hear her from here." "Let's wait a bit," Alexander suggested, pulling her back down onto the blanket. "I want you to myself for a little while longer." They planned a small wedding for October, when the leaves would be turning colors and the air would be crisp with autumn promise. Elena insisted on keeping it intimate, just close friends and family, despite Alexander's initial worry that his business associates would be offended not to be invited. "This day is about us," she said firmly. "Not about networking or appearances, just us and the people we love most." He agreed without further argument, and Elena loved him even more for it. They got married on Alexander's property, in the garden his mother had designed, under a canopy of trees dressed in red and gold. Elena wore a simple ivory dress that made her feel beautiful without being ostentatious. Alexander wore a dark suit and the vintage Omega she had restored for him, and when he saw her walking down the makeshift aisle, his eyes filled with tears. Maria was Elena's maid of honor, making a speech that was equal parts heartfelt and hilarious. Alexander's best friend from college, a quiet man named James who owned a bookstore, served as best man and told embarrassing stories from their university days. When they exchanged vows, Elena felt like her heart might burst. Alexander promised to always support her dreams, to bring her coffee in the morning, and to love her through all the complications and challenges life would bring. She promised to always be honest with him, to believe in him even when he doubted himself, and to love him through every broken watch and every repaired heart. They honeymooned in Switzerland, visiting the workshops where some of the world's finest watches were made. Elena was like a child in a candy store, touring the facilities and talking with master watchmakers about their craft. Alexander watched her with undisguised adoration, happy to spend his honeymoon in watch museums and repair shops because it made his wife happy. In a small shop in Geneva, they found a beautiful antique wall clock that needed significant restoration. They bought it together and shipped it home, planning to repair it side by side as their first official project as a married couple. When they returned home, Elena threw herself back into her work with renewed energy. Her classes were thriving, and she had developed a waiting list of students who wanted to learn from her. Several of her students showed real promise, including a teenage girl named Sophie who reminded Elena of herself at that age, all fierce concentration and gentle hands. Alexander surprised her one evening by announcing that he was restructuring his company to focus more on historic preservation and adaptive reuse projects like their building. "You inspired me," he explained. "Watching you bring old watches back to life, preserving their history while making them functional again. It made me realize that's what I should be doing with buildings. Not tearing them down to build something new, but restoring them, honoring their past while giving them a future." Elena kissed him, proud beyond words. "Your grandfather would be so proud of you." "I hope so. I like to think he brought us together somehow. That first watch I brought you, the one that belonged to him, maybe he knew what would happen. Maybe he did." In December, a year after their first Christmas together, Elena discovered she was pregnant. She had been feeling off for a few weeks, exhausted in a way that seemed disproportionate to her workload. When the test came back positive, she stared at it in shock for a full 5 minutes before the reality sank in. She told Alexander that evening, simply handing him the test without preamble. He looked at it, looked at her, and then let out a whoop of joy so loud it probably woke the neighbors. He picked her up carefully, spinning her gently, his face radiating pure happiness. "We're having a baby," he kept repeating. "We're going to be parents. Are you ready for this?" Elena asked, suddenly nervous. "With you, I'm ready for anything." Pregnancy agreed with Elena, much to her relief. She glowed, according to Maria, though she felt like she mostly just craved pickles at odd hours and needed to pee constantly. She worked throughout her pregnancy, finally taking leave only in her 8th month when bending over a workbench became too uncomfortable. Alexander was attentive to the point of being comical, constantly worried about her overworking or lifting something too heavy. Elena found it endearing and exasperating in equal measure. "I'm pregnant, not made of glass," she reminded him regularly. "I know. But you're carrying the most precious thing in the world, and I just want to keep you both safe." Their daughter was born on a warm evening in August, arriving 3 days before her due date with a lusty cry that announced her presence to the world. They named her Claire Marie, after both their mothers, and when the nurse placed her in Elena's arms, she felt a love so fierce and overwhelming that it took her breath away. Alexander cried when he held his daughter for the first time, this tiny perfect person that they had created together. "She has your eyes," he whispered. "She has your stubbornness," Elena countered. She was in no hurry to arrive. Those early months were exhausting and wonderful. Elena had never known it was possible to function on so little sleep or to love something so small so completely. Alexander proved to be a natural father, patient and gentle with their daughter, willing to change diapers at 3 in the morning and pace the floors when Claire was fussy. Maria came by regularly, bringing food and baby clothes and unsolicited advice. She became Claire's godmother and favorite auntie, spoiling her shamelessly from day one. When Claire was 6 months old, Elena began easing back into work. She hired her former student Sophie, who had just graduated and was thrilled to have a position with someone she respected so deeply. Sophie handled most of the teaching and basic repairs, allowing Elena to focus on the more complex projects and spend time with her daughter. Alexander adjusted his work schedule to be home more, taking morning meetings via video call so he could help with Claire in the early hours. They figured it out together, stumbling sometimes but always supporting each other. On Claire's first birthday, they threw a small party in their apartment. As Elena watched Alexander play with their daughter, making her giggle with exaggerated faces, she thought about how far she had come. From the small shop on Maple Street, where she had been alone with her grief and her watches, to this beautiful life full of love and purpose and joy. "What are you thinking about?" Alexander asked, catching her watching him. "How a broken watch changed my entire life." He smiled, that same smile that had caught her attention the very first day he walked into her shop. "Best investment I ever made. You didn't invest in a watch repair. You invested in us. Same thing. You fixed more than my grandfather's watch, Elena. You fixed me." She crossed the room and kissed him, careful not to jostle the baby in his arms. "We fixed each other." Years passed in the beautiful, complicated way that years do. Claire grew from a baby into a curious toddler, fascinated by her mother's work and constantly trying to help with repairs in ways that made Elena both nervous and proud. She showed early signs of having inherited her mother's patience and her father's determination. Martinez's Timepieces became one of the most respected watch repair establishments in the region. Elena's students went on to open their own shops or join prestigious companies. Her museum collection grew, drawing visitors from across the country who wanted to see her carefully curated displays of horological history. Alexander's company thrived as well, winning awards for their preservation work and setting new standards for how historic buildings could be adapted for modern use. He credited Elena constantly, telling anyone who would listen that his wife had taught him to see value in broken things, to recognize that sometimes restoration was more important than replacement. They had their challenges, of course. A miscarriage between Claire and their second child that devastated them both. A period when Alexander's company faced serious financial difficulties, and he had to make hard decisions about layoffs and restructuring. Times when Elena worked too much and Alexander felt neglected, or when his travel schedule meant she was managing everything alone, but they always came back to each other. They had learned to communicate, to forgive, to support even when they did not fully understand. They had learned that love was not just a feeling but a choice, made new every day. Their son Michael was born when Claire was 4, a peaceful baby who seemed content to observe the world with quiet curiosity. He inherited his father's dark hair and his mother's eyes, and from the beginning, he showed an interest in taking things apart to see how they worked. "We're in trouble," Alexander joked when he found 2-year-old Michael carefully disassembling a toy truck. "He's going to take apart everything we own." "Good," Elena said. He's learning. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Alexander surprised Elena by taking her back to the Thai restaurant 3 blocks from where her original shop had been. The building that had housed Martina's timepieces was now a bakery, and Elena felt a pang of nostalgia looking at it. "You miss it?" Alexander asked, following her gaze. "Sometimes, but I wouldn't trade what we have now for anything." "Even on the days when Claire breaks something expensive and Michael puts peanut butter in the DVD player," Elena laughed. "Even then." They walked back to their building hand in hand, past the illuminated windows of Martina's timepieces, where Sophie was closing up for the night, past the museum on the 2nd floor where vintage watches ticked away the seconds in perfect harmony, up to their apartment where their children were being watched by Maria. In their bedroom, Elena found a gift wrapped in simple paper on her pillow. Inside was a watch, but not just any watch. It was the Patek Philippe, his grandfather's watch, the very first one he had brought to her shop all those years ago. "I want you to have this," Alexander said softly. "It brought me to you. It gave me an excuse to walk into your shop and into your life. It's the most important thing I own, and I want you to keep it safe." Elena held the watch carefully, feeling the weight of it, the history. "Are you sure?" "Completely. One day, we can give it to Claire or Michael and tell them the story of how a broken watch brought their parents together." She set the watch down carefully and pulled him close. "I love you," she said. 10 years later, 100 broken watches later, 2 kids later, I love you even more than I did the day we got married. "Good thing," he murmured against her hair, "because I plan on bringing you broken watches for the rest of our lives. And I'll fix every single one." They stood there in the quiet of their bedroom, holding each other as the sounds of their children's laughter drifted down the hall, as the watches in the museum below continued their eternal ticking, as the city hummed with life around them. Elena thought about time and how it moved, how it could be measured in seconds and minutes and hours, in the precise movements of gears and springs, but also how it could be measured in moments, in first meetings and first kisses, in proposals and wedding vows, in births and birthdays, and all the ordinary, extraordinary days in between. She had spent her life understanding mechanical time, but Alexander had taught her about human time, about how a single moment could change everything, about how the best things took patience and care to build, about how broken things could be made whole again with the right touch and enough love. Outside their window, the historic district was lit up against the night sky, buildings that had stood for generations continuing to serve new purposes. Just like the watches she repaired, they had been given new life while honoring their past. It was a philosophy she tried to live by, one that Alexander had embraced wholeheartedly. Years later, when Claire was 16 and showing real talent for watchmaking, she asked her mother how she had known Alexander was the one. They were in the workshop together, Elena supervising as Claire worked on a complicated pocket watch repair. It was late afternoon, golden light streaming through the windows, and for a moment Elena was transported back to her father's shop, learning these same skills, feeling this same sense of purpose. "He kept coming back," Elena said finally. "Every week, another broken watch. At first I thought it was coincidence. Then I realized he was finding excuses to see me. But more than that, he saw me. Not just a service provider or someone to fix his things, but really saw me. Who I was, what I loved, what mattered to me, and he respected all of it." Claire carefully adjusted a tiny gear. "That's romantic." "It was, it is. But more than romance, it's partnership. Your father and I built this life together. This business, this home, you and your brother. We did it by showing up for each other even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. I hope I find that someday. You will. And when you do, hold on tight and don't let go." Michael, now 14, poked his head into the workshop. "Mom, Dad says dinner is ready. He made pasta." Elena and Claire exchanged a knowing look. Alexander's pasta was legendary in their household, though perhaps not in a good way. "Did he remember the salt this time?" Claire asked. "He said it's perfect," Michael reported, "but he also ordered pizza just in case." They all laughed, heading upstairs to their apartment where Alexander was indeed setting out both homemade pasta and delivery pizza, looking sheepish but unrepentant. "I tried," he defended himself. "The pasta is probably fine." "It's perfect," Elena assured him, kissing his cheek. "Because you made it." They gathered around the table, the four of them, sharing food and stories about their day. Michael talked about his science project. Claire complained about her math homework. Alexander described a challenging restoration project his company had just been awarded. Elena listened to her family, feeling gratitude wash over her like a wave. This was what she had built. Not just a successful business or a beautiful home, but this. This family, this love, this life. It had started with a broken watch, and a man with storm cloud eyes who kept coming back week after week. It had been built through honesty and forgiveness, through passion and patience, through all the tiny moments that accumulated into years. That night, after the kids were in bed, Elena found Alexander in their bedroom getting ready for sleep. She wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her cheek against his back. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For breaking your grandfather's watch, for coming into my shop, for seeing me, for loving me, for all of this." He turned in her arms, smiling down at her. "I should thank you. You took this broken thing and made it whole again. The watch or you. Both. Either doesn't matter." Elena thought about it, about all the watches she had repaired over the years, about all the broken things she had made whole again. About how her father had taught her that every watch was a universe unto itself, all the pieces working together in perfect harmony. About how love was the same way, requiring care and attention and sometimes careful adjustment to keep everything running smoothly. "No," she said finally, "it doesn't matter, because we fixed each other and we'll keep fixing whatever breaks as long as we have time." "Speaking of time," Alexander said, pulling her toward the bed, "let's not waste any more of it talking." She laughed, letting him pull her down beside him, and thought how perfect it was that a woman who worked with time for a living had found someone who made her forget it entirely. In his arms, minutes became meaningless. Hours passed in heartbeats. Time both stopped and accelerated, and Elena understood that this was the real magic of love. Not stopping time or even slowing it, but making every second count, filling every moment with meaning. The watch on her nightstand, the Patek Philippe that had started everything, ticked away the seconds in steady rhythm. It would keep ticking long after they were gone, just as her shop would continue teaching new generations the art of restoration, just as their children would carry forward the lessons they had learned about love and patience, and seeing value in broken things. But for now, in this moment, Elena was content to simply be here, with the man who had walked into her shop with a broken watch and walked out with her heart, with the life they had built together, piece by precious piece, with the knowledge that sometimes the best things come from taking your time, handling things with care, and having the patience to fix what seems irreparably broken. Outside, the city continued its eternal rhythm. Inside, two hearts beat in sync, keeping time together as they had for years and would for years to come. And in the workshop below, watches ticked away in the darkness, each one a small miracle of precision and care, each one a testament to the power of restoration, each one a reminder that broken things can be made whole again with the right touch and enough love. That was the legacy Elena wanted to leave. Not just the watches she had repaired or the students she had taught, but the understanding that nothing was ever truly broken beyond repair. That with patience and skill and love, anything could be made whole again. It was a lesson her father had taught her about watches, but Alexander had taught her it applied to people too. As she drifted off to sleep, surrounded by everything she loved most in the world, Elena sent up a silent thank you to whoever, or whatever, had brought that broken watch and that lost man into her shop all those years ago. She had fixed his watch, but he had fixed her heart, and together they had built something beautiful and lasting. In the museum below, surrounded by hundreds of other timepieces, the Patek Philippe continued to tick, marking time in its precise, mechanical way. But upstairs, in a bed warmed by love and years and memories, Elena and Alexander had learned a different kind of timekeeping. The kind measured not in seconds but in moments, not in precision but in presence. Not in individual components but in the sum of all parts working together in perfect harmony. That was the real magic of love and watches both. Understanding that the whole was greater than the sum of its parts. That careful attention and regular maintenance kept everything running smoothly. That sometimes things broke, but they could always be repaired. And that time, whether mechanical or human, was precious beyond measure and should never be wasted. Elena had devoted her life to honoring time, to preserving it, to helping others understand its value. But in the end, the greatest gift time had given her was Alexander. The man who had brought her a broken watch and given her a whole life in return.